Good afternoon, everyone, for joining this session. Just to give you a background, uh, I am associated with the uh, medical device innovation space for uh, now 7 years. Okay, and lot of very high quality medical devices have been innovated not only at the incubator of IIT Kanpur, but I am aware of many other places as well. Now, the medical devices, their destination is a patient. And the the accuracy or dependability of the medical device is absolutely critical. Just to give you a very simple example, even if your thermometer that is ubiquitous in our homes, if that malfunctions and instead of a very high fever of 104 degrees, if it reads 99, or instead of a lowly 99 fever, if it reads 104, the treatment can vary dramatically. Therefore, medical devices must be dependable and trustworthy by the doctors, because end of the day it is the doctor uh, who is responsible for the patient's life, and the doctor absolutely depends on all the engineering implements which are the medical devices. Like if you walk in a hospital, other than the doctors and the nurses or the paramedical staff, human beings, everything else are engineering implements. And if those implements are not functioning right, catastrophe can happen. So now, if we look into the situation in India, and this has been my experience with many of the medical device innovation that I am privy to and I have been a part of their journey, is that they would write to the regulatory organization, regulatory body, and quite efficiently they will get back a nicely worded letter that will say that this device does not need regulation in India as on today, or is not regulated in India as on today. Now, that in the beginning made the companies, heave with a sigh of relief that I don't have to go through all the hoops of medical device regulation. It is not regulated in the country. But the flip side of that is that that piece of paper is absolutely no consolation for the doctor. The doctor cannot derive any confidence on that device simply because it is not required to be regulated. Because as I said, end of the day, the doctor has the responsibility of saving the patient's life. Therefore, doctor must have some means to trust that medical device. And that is precisely the job that medical device regulation ecosystem is supposed to do. That is to rigorously test, to ensure that the device has performs exactly as it is mentioned in their product sheet specification. It is durable, it is safe, electrically safe, fire safe, does not have any problem with interference from other electronic devices nearby, because any of these can create problems. And that is the reason why there should be a testing and certification regime. And I know that in the US or in European system where certification regime exists, it is not for the faint heart. It is quite complex. And India has decided to start on this journey um, last year, like till 2020, 31st March, only 22 or 23 medical devices were regulated in the country. And uh, the plan is, at least was, that by October 1, 2021, all medical devices will be regulated in the country. So that is a quantum leap. And I'm sure that there will be nuances of it. Uh, and that is precisely the purpose, that what is medical device regulation? How do we go about it? How do we negotiate this maze that will eventually give your device the certification that it is worthy of being used in a hospital setting or for patient home, etc. So that journey has to be demystified, because by definition, most of us are not aware of it, simply because this country did not have a framework for that. And that is the reason, to make you all aware of it, we have decided at SIIC, the Startup Innovation and Incubation Center of IIT Kanpur, to organize a 6-part webinar series, which is called Medical Devices, Awaiting India to Take the Lead, Prospects and Challenges. Last year, when our incubator helped one of our startup companies, Nokirk Robotics, to develop an ICU ventilator, we did have our fair share of challenges vis-a-vis the regulatory framework. But end of the day, we know that we have been able to develop a product that is competitive globally. Therefore, we do not have any dearth of talent, engineering talent, to build medical devices. And we are ready to arrive at the global scene. All we need is a robust mechanism to test and certify those devices so that others can trust it. And a new development has happened. I will not talk about it, because one of the key drivers for that development and an icon in the Indian medical devices industry, Mr. Rajiv Nath, is with us as the speaker for the inaugural edition of the webinar series. I know that for this particular audience, Mr. Nath does not need an introduction, but nonetheless, I have been entrusted with the job, so I will do it. Mr. Rajiv Nath is the Managing Director of Hindustan Syringes and Medical Devices Limited. He is President of All India Syringes and Needles Manufacturing Association. I guess I should add that almost all of us who are getting vaccinated today are getting vaccinated using the syringes made by Mr. Nath's company. The AIMed, or the All India Medical Devices Association, has over 350 members, and it is a national platform. Mr. Nath's company, HMD, created a niche for the disposable syringe, Dispovan, which is today the most popular brand in syringe market in India. And AIMed is an umbrella association for Indian manufacturers of medical devices, covering all types of medical devices, including consumables, disposables, equipments, instruments, and all. And he holds at present the post of Managing Director of Hindustan Syringes and Medical Devices. He is the President of All India Syringes and Needles Manufacturing Association, Forum Coordinator of Association of Indian Medical Devices Industry, Joint Coordinator of Indian Medical Device Regulatory Review Group, Joint Coordinator of UDAIMed, Forum of User, Developer, Academia, Industry, Medical Device Development Interface with the government, board member of Kalam Institute of Healthcare Technology, member of National Medical Device Promotion Council, chairman IPC Committee on Medical Device Standard, chairman Technical Committee ICMed Certification by QCI, member of Expert Advisory Group for Biomedical Device and Technology Development by Department of Science and Technology, and so on and so forth. He is also a member of the Expert Advisory Group to CDSCO, the apex body for medical device regulation in the country. But in one sentence, Mr. Nath is a great champion of the innovation and incubation ecosystem of IIT Kanpur and of all medical device innovators in the country. And it is really a pleasure, a privilege to have him amongst us to inform us about his journey and about the future of medical devices industry in the country and where the regulation fits in and how to go about it. Mr. Nath, it is really an honor and privilege to have you here. Thank you. Please, stage is all yours.
Thank you, Professor Saab, for this warm welcome and nice introduction. For me, it was a dream to get admission into an IIT, and I could not qualify. Rather than go to an ITI, I switched to commerce and became a businessman. So that's been my journey, but yes, technology is something which I hold very dear. Without technology, we cannot really be competitive or be leaders. If you can kindly allow me to share my screen, I will just like to make a presentation to you all.
Yes, sir, it's enabled. You can go ahead and share your screen.
It is open. Yeah.
Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Is the presentation visible to you?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay. I think my internet network from Airtel is not being very stable today. So apologies in case my voice breaks. Please bear with me. So I thank everybody for joining into this session, and it's my honor to brief you about the prospects and challenges which developers, startups, and entrepreneurs who wish to operate in the medical devices arena or who wish to invest over here or already are working in this area, what these challenges can be and how do we overcome them. So this agenda for the webinar, what has been explained to me by Aditi and Professor Saab, is regarding on the medtech space. The objectives, I will define them, what has been told to me, and on identifying opportunities for people who want to explore this area, understanding the challenges over here, and what are the kind of solutions that are available either individually or jointly through an association platform or through the government, and what you cannot do. Sometimes you need mentors and consultants to help you. How do we use them? And case studies or in a story format, how we can understand the nuances of this interesting field. So IIT Kanpur has kindly created this nice incubation and innovation center. They plan to put a medical hospital at IIT Kanpur, and this will become a very unique proposition where you have an engineering college and a medical college and a hospital on the same premises, which will allow cross-pollination of ideas, healthcare technologies, and medical innovation to take place. Something on the lines of Johns Hopkins in USA. So the objective from this program is to promote next gen of entrepreneurs and startups who can incubate disruptive technologies and innovation in the medical space. And my focus on today's topic will be on the quality tools and solutions in terms of regulatory and business challenges. Briefly about the industry. What we have over here is a domain which is about 1,10,000 crore rupees with about 1,500 manufacturers, and nearly 70% of these are less than 10 crore rupees turnover companies. Less than 10% of the industry is having turnover of more than 50 crore rupees. I can count on my fingertips the number of companies who can do turnover of more than 500 crore rupees. And practically there is only one company, and that also is including imports. Medical devices have got 7 major groups. So you got the consumables and disposables, you got the electronics and the equipment, surgical instruments and implants, and IoT diagnostics. Coming to the prospects and coming to the opportunities, 85% of what you see over here is imported. In the last 1 year, the imports have been stalled. So the imports have come down as a growth rate to 7%. Earlier, the growth rate was about 10 to 15%. Now we have a position whereby last year's imports are at 46,000 crore rupees. And this is a fair composition of the market dynamics in terms of distribution between imports and domestic manufacturing. And this is the area of prospects for you. The pink or the red is the area of imports, and here lies the opportunity, because this is the area for expansion, not only in terms of import substitution, but also to make the product for export and the global community. Because we have seen when Indians do well in competing with the imports, we have to be competitive not only to satisfy the doctors and surgeons who are very difficult to be convinced in the country that we become competitive worldwide. And sometimes it's easier to export than to sell in the local market. You can go to IMED's website, and over there you can download an easily available data sheet which is giving the import and the export data of the various medical devices, nearly 150 HS categories. And these have been colored by us in 3 color codes: red, orange, green. Red is where there's enough capacity in the country. So we don't really need to make unnecessary investments and have overcapacity and over-competition. Orange is where some capacity has been put up, but there is still scope to improve, or there is scope for innovative products which can compete based on complementary strengths. And green is where we are completely more or less import dependent, and the country needs manufacturing to take place so we can be self-dependent country as wished by our Prime Minister. So what are the challenges? I'll give you an example of 3 friends. Ajay is a doctor in AIMS. Vijay is an engineer in IIT. Sunil is their friend who is studying economics. They're sitting and chatting one day, and the doctor friend, Ajay, gives across a clinical issue that he is facing and relates the problem to his engineer friend. Vijay understands the problem. The party breaks up over the beers, they go home, they relax. After a few days, Vijay again calls Ajay and tells him, I've studied about your problem that you have put across, and I think I have a solution. Can we meet up? So they meet up and discuss. And it's something like a nebulizer kind of a product which was being discussed. And he carries forward the nebulizer with some changes and discusses the solution which he has in mind for the clinical problem. The doctor friend, of course, gets excited. He gives forward his own opinion and other ideas, and together they start working on an idea to make a more robust prototype. And meanwhile, they think of discussing with their doctor professor and show to him, the surgeon, their idea about the prototype that they are planning to make as an iteration of the nebulizer which they have in their hand. They meet the professor surgeon and they explain the idea to him, but he is not satisfied. And this is a medical product, so he just can't simply use it on a patient and give them his clinical opinion. So he starts asking questions to the engineer. And Ajay is completely dumbfounded because he has not done any market survey. He just took it as an engineering challenge and he's applied his mind, and now he's come forward with some solutions. Faced with this barrage of questions, the two walk out sheepishly from their office of the surgeon, and then they meet up in the coffee shop, and they're joined by Sunil, their economist friend, and they relate to him the challenges and the questions pushed forward by the surgeon professor. So the challenge for them becomes, what is the price a surgeon is looking for? At what price would it be attractive for him to buy the product? If there are competing products in the market, the idea that is being proposed, is it a novel idea or it already exists? And the product, what kind of MRP the competition is having? Because this will not only be used by the surgeon, it will be for home care use. And since it will be for home care use, for the consumer, the MRP or the price is important. So the economist friend Sunil starts asking his lot of questions, and the engineer gets dumbfounded with his barrage of questions. Have you done any costing? Are you aware that these equipments are being imported? Are you aware that the market is flooded with pre-owned equipment? How will you be able to compete with the imports? So the engineer and the doctor friend, they get slightly challenged and confused. So they seek to be educated, and they request Sunil to kindly inform them what is the custom duty and what are the details regarding the imports. So Sunil says, okay, he will help them do market research, and he will study the Department of Commerce website, and he will inform them what is the custom duty on the product and what is the normal import price for this kind of product. So they look forward to another meeting in a week's time, and then he provides them the input. Based on the availability of the input, they slightly get now more confident that they can compete. And they get also confident that when they will make in the country, they can make it cheaper. Now the next question for them became that if they have to make the product, at least the prototype design should be accepted by the surgeon. So they again go and meet the surgeon and request him to kindly evaluate the product and assure him that once the product is evaluated and whatever feedback he gives, they will incorporate all those ideas and make it into a better product. He can give them a target price, and if they meet the target price, can that surgeon promote that product to his other friends in the medical community? Which of course he agrees. But then again he reminds them that he cannot use this prototype for any clinical evaluation and give them any feedback, because this is a healthcare product, and now that they have tampered with the design, it is not as it was originally. So the original product was qualified to be used medically, and now he is not so sure whether he can use this product medically on a patient who may be unwilling to be part of the clinical evaluation or the clinical trial. So this becomes again a challenge. So the three of them start discussing, and now the doctor and the engineer friend are the ones who are raising the questions, and the surgeon is not able to answer them. So they start giving their questions across, that if they make the product, what is the surgeon looking for in terms of quality? What kind of standards he wants the product to be complying with? Is it under regulations? Is it under the Drugs Act or not? And even the surgeon is unsure. He is not very clear whether that particular product is in the Drug Act or not. He knows certain medical devices are covered under the Drugs Act and some are not, but he is not sure about this particular one. So there is confusion and gray area. So they again part up and they decide to meet up while the surgeon will talk to his other medical friends and his supplier and purchase manager and find out whether the product is covered under the Drug Act and what are the regulatory requirements for the traders and the hospital and for the manufacturer. So later on he calls them and informs them that yes, the product has now just few months back been covered under the medical device rules, and this year if they have to launch a nebulizer kind of a product, even if it is an innovative nebulizer, they have to get a manufacturing license. So okay, now the engineer friend talks to his father and to his uncle who are willing to invest, and they also get excited by the idea. But they don't want to go and invest in a big manner. They want to hedge their bets and limit their risk. So the challenge becomes for the engineer is he is not able to find what he had heard from his other friends in USA and in Germany. They would talk about a plug and play facility where they can go into an innovation hub and they can use that facility to create prototypes and to create quantity, small batch volume product in a clinical area or in a clean room area, get it qualified and tested, and then seek regulatory approvals. And when they want to go for buying some land or getting it on rent, they find it is not available. It's a challenge. So if it is not regulated, okay, they can make it in their garage, they can make it on their versati of their house. But now since it is coming under regulation, they need to have a proper industrial zone. And in Delhi area, there is no proper industrial zone available with facilities which are commercially, I would say, affordable for these entrepreneurs to start with. So it's a challenge for them. They go to the SIIC office, which is for the small scale industry, and find out if there's a plug and play facility available for them and if there's any support available from the government for that particular purpose or not. Because the government, they know in the newspaper is talking about helping startups. So they wonder what kind of help they can get as a startup. Then there comes the next question is that, okay, when we make a small batch production and they get the support from SIIC, what kind of standards does the product have to comply with? So they start searching for the standards in the BIS library, and they find that BIS doesn't have any standard for this particular product. So without a standard, how do you benchmark and test the product? Which laboratory to use? That becomes a challenge. How do they show that it's going to be a quality product? Now suddenly there is a lot of pressure. COVID is around. People are talking about oxygen therapy. There is more excitement. A lot of discussions in the medical college, a lot of discussions in the engineering college that yes, such kind of products are required, such innovation is required. And the professor, surgeon also is now making the calls. Rather than they chasing him, he is also interested. But even he is having the challenge and not able to guide them to what quality standards they must comply the product with. So they start searching for government procurement tenders, because government procurement tenders should be having the standard and specifications listed over there, at least for the standard product, if not for the innovative product. So they start searching over there and they start downloading the tender forms, and they start noticing the tenders are very discriminatory. The tenders are asking the supplier to have US FDA or CE marking certification, which will not be available to an Indian manufacturer easily. So the two boys, they are now more confused. So on one side, they are feeling enthusiastic. On one side, the enthusiasm is being dampened. How can they get this expensive CE certification? And who will give it to them? And when they start trying to read the Drug Act, they get again challenged. The legal terminology which is used in that book is frightening. They have read, of course, engineering, and even engineering can be tough and boring. And scientific clauses are, of course, there, nomenclature, terminology. But this is for pharmaceutical industry and they are not used to the terminology. Then they come to know that if you will make a mistake, and now since it is under the Drug Act, they must be careful, because if there's a quality failure, they can be put behind bars. And who wants to be treated as a criminal? They're engineers. Okay, something goes wrong, they can always make a replacement. But who wants to go to jail? So when they start searching the tenders for pricing to benchmark their price and see whether they can be competitive, they start finding that the market is flooded with the Chinese imports in the government tenders. And if they are going to be winning, they may be making a better quality product. They may be having an innovation, but the government will not be paying them extra price for that innovation, because that innovative idea is not listed in the tender. So they have to match with the vanilla product in terms of pricing. So they are having to give a higher quality or higher specification or higher performance product with their innovation, but match the vanilla product's pricing if they want any business from the government. So then they think we must make two kinds of models. One should be the vanilla model and one should be the innovative model. The next area, they get a small batch made. Why make the investment straight away? Find a subcontractor who is already making medical devices. So they find a friend who finds another friend, and he says, okay, I know somebody who makes these kind of nebulizers. He imports the parts from China and Taiwan, and he assembles them and he can help you. So this guy can subcontract and supply you. So they use him and they get the product made from this friend. Now they start bidding for the tender and they find the payment is not available. If the payment will not be available, how do they pay their supplier? How does he make the next batch? Now they have the order, but they are challenged that they don't have the cash to buy the next round of the batch, because they have not been paid by their earlier customer. So they start facing cash flow problems and they need to go to the bank and seek some loan. their father and uncle was helping, but that is not being enough. So on one side, they find the prospects that another tender is coming out because of COVID, and this time will not be for a few pieces, it will be for many thousands of pieces. So yes, but the tender would be requiring a bare minimum qualification requirement that you must be able to supply at least so many thousand pieces every month. So a few hundred pieces will not work. So on one side it is good news that you have assured customer. Other side is finding the factory to make that large volume and finding the finance to make that large volume. So that becomes the next challenge of scaling up. So while they are of course addressing the hospital market in the government tender, their economist friend Sunil says he will help them to try to market the product in the private hospitals, which may be more profitable and easier, and they don't have to make so many thousands of pieces a month. Few hundred pieces, more profitable, can be sold in private market, etc. But when they start going over there, they find the purchase manager is not really willing to buy their product. So after many rounds of visits, Sunil takes the purchase manager out for a beer in the evening, and over drinks the purchase manager explains to them that the problem is not their price being low. The problem is that the price is too low. So he is confused. If you are buying something for 1,000, I am giving you for 500, you should be giving me more business. No, it doesn't work like that. Your product may be at 500 rupees, I am getting imported one at 1,000 rupees, but you have put the MRP on your product at 1,000 rupees. I am only making 500 rupees on your product. On the imported product, I am buying at 1,000 rupees, okay, but I am selling at 5,000 rupees. On that one, my hospital makes 4,000 rupees. So on your product, I make only 500 rupees. If we are consuming 100 pieces a month, we will use 4,000 rupees on 400 pieces a month. Who will compensate us for that? Na, Baba, na. My director will not accept this. Finance manager will not accept this. So kindly revise your pricing policy. This MRP will not work. Okay, we can print whatever MRP you want. You want 5,000 rupees, I'll put 5,000 rupees label. It's only a sticker. So Sunil goes back and tells his engineer friend, this will not work with such low pricing. I've spoken to the purchase manager. 5,000 rupees may be too high for imported product, same price, but let us keep it at say 3,000 rupees. 500 rupees is too cheap, you have put it. So let us put the MRP at 3,000 rupees. They decide to do that, but when they discuss with their other friend, he cautions them, no, this product is coming under Drug Act now. Under Drug Act, you cannot increase the MRP by more than 10% a year. So you launch the product at 500 rupees, now your price next year can only be 550 rupees. You can't by whims and fancies increase the price from 500 rupees to 2,000 rupees. It may be your mistake. You may have underquoted the product, but you cannot do like that. Okay. What do we do? So they meet somebody who explains to them that maybe you can launch the product under a different color, different packaging, different brand name, and then relaunch the product under a higher price. Maybe that might work. That is how you might try to beat the system. Okay. Then they start finding when they are actually going to Bagir place and start selling the product, they find that actually the imported one doesn't have any address. Indian manufacturers, they have to keep the address. They have to put the MRP. Anything goes wrong, they are answerable. But nobody is checking on the imported product. It is available in the market without any address, without any MRP. Tomorrow something goes wrong, nobody is answerable. Nobody is traceable. Not really fair, but yes, that is how the market is. Another challenge which Sunil tells them when he is trying to sell the product to the other private hospital chains, now 3,000 rupees of course is being attractive. They are getting 2,500 rupees per piece, which is being attractive. But the doctors over there are not so happy to sell a product. Why? Because the doctor says that he is not really happy with the quality. Okay, tell me what the problem with the quality is, we'll fix it. But when they probe and they come to know it's nothing about the quality, the doctor was really biased and the purchase manager biased. Why? Because he has been going on foreign trips sponsored by the supplier of the American company, and his family's son's education is being taken care of in USA. How he cannot change to your brand? So the purchase manager tells Sunil, don't waste your time over here. There are other hospitals, it's a large market, try somewhere else. Here I doubt anything will change because the boss is already supporting this. So this becomes a challenge over here. Other challenges they face is regarding the brand image of the imported brand is strong. If they want to do benchmark studies, it becomes a challenge to convince the doctors that their product is a better quality product because the foreign companies have got proper presentations, they've got articles in the magazine like Lancet. How do you get your article in the magazine in ICIGP? Which doctor will keep a nice scientific article and peer-reviewed article over there? How much money they ask to write that article? So, very big challenges. The next area they find is that in certain hospitals you cannot sell the product because it is coming with another attachment. And since it's a bundled supply, he will not change over so easily to your product. So even though it is being competitive at 500 rupees versus 2,500 rupees, he may not be willing to change over because he will lose on something else over there. And you don't qualify to make the whole range. So can you make the whole range? No, I cannot make the whole range. Then it's difficult to buy your product. So certain places becomes challenge in the government because the specifications are being vague, not clear. So you try to educate the buyer. I have innovative product. My product is not the vanilla nebulizer, it is a different nebulizer. Please make the specifications suited to my product. It doesn't change so easily in public healthcare. How does he convince him? The buyer is convinced, but he doesn't want to change the specifications. People will say you are having conflict of interest. Other challenge they face is that there may be certain importers taking place who claim to be manufacturers. So of course, the government has come out with a scheme, tender has come out, that the tender is reserved not for imports, only for Indian manufacturers. So it says Indian manufacturers, so now very few manufacturers are there, so I will be able to get a good price. But they find the order has gone to somebody else. When they inquire, they come to know the order has gone to somebody who is actually importing the product from China, is only putting the sticker on and changing the box. Big challenge. And the few salespeople they have hired, and now the competition has paid a high salary to them and taken them away. So now the engineer becomes the engineer and the factory manager and also the sales manager. So he asked Sunil to give him some more friends to become a sales staff. Now innovation is coming around so fast that within 6 months' time, there are new market products in the market. So the innovative product is no more innovative, it's already obsolete. Very fancy colors, very fancy designs have come into the market. How do they keep on iterating the product, change the mold, keep on making improvements in the technology and try to be competitive? So of course, they try to seek the help from their engineering institute, but it's not so easy. So how do we deal with these challenges and what are the solutions, if any? So these are the things which we need to be discussing, and over the next 5 webinars, we will try to address them. We will come to the first and foremost one over here is regarding quality and regarding certification. So there is a big challenge in the market of quality regarding voluntary certifications and regarding mandatory standards. So what the Drug Act says are mandatory standards, and these are actually bare minimum requirements for patient safety. As an aspiring manufacturer, you need to make the product as per a voluntary quality standard. And even those quality standards are again minimal requirements between peer manufacturers. One brand will be a market leader from Japan, another brand will be market leader in Germany. Why? Because their quality is much higher than the bare minimum international standard or the BIS standard. So, Quality Council of India, along with IMED, created this certification scheme, what Professor Saab was talking about, called the Icma certification scheme and the Icma 13485 certification. Icma 9000 is based on the vanilla quality management system standard, which is for most engineering products, which you may be familiar with in your colleges, called ISO 9000, on which there are certain additional requirements. And Icma 1345 is another scheme which is built on a quality management system which is meant for medical devices for regulatory purposes, and also meets the requirement for the new medical device rules and the regulations with additional regulatory requirements. These two schemes are quality management system based. When we say quality management system, it means the process in the factory to ensure a system which will ensure consistent quality. And then recently we've launched from Quality Council of India, Icma 1345 Plus, which is a product certification scheme. So not only the quality of your company or the product of your company is, the process is being monitored, but the product also has to be complying with the standard or specification. And that standard or specification is something you can choose, but which has to be accepted by the Icma technical committee and the certification body, and that standard needs to be an ISO standard or an IEC standard. So this becomes the criteria. So on the base ISO 1345 standard, which is very important if you are in the medical line or you want to be in the medical device line, this has to become your Bible of starting anything in manufacturing. Whether you are engineer, entrepreneur, manufacturer, startup, you must study the standard. There are around 184 base requirements, and the ICMET has made more simple. You can go to the ICMET website, download the document over there and educate yourself on the 207 requirements and the 13 essential requirements of patient safety. Is the product design safety use? Because for many of the innovative products, there are no product standards like I told you. But still you have to prove your product is safe. So there are ways to prove it safe by addressing certain questions and giving answers in a scientific and engineering methodology, and by technical documentation and testing, by using other horizontal standards to prove that a product is safe. And then of course you will meet the regulatory labeling requirements by the Drug Act or by the requirement from the Consumer Act. So here you'll be able to see this is the journey for quality. So the bare first step on quality is your ISO 13485 standard. Once you've taken the first step, you have to then take the next step of meeting 23 additional regulatory requirements in ICMET certification, and then meeting 16 regulatory requirements for labeling, and then address the patient safety requirements and make the documentation and technical file to show that you are addressing those requirements. And you use horizontal standards to demonstrate that. Use tests within your own factory or outside factory to achieve that, or engineering college. And in case there is a product standard, you will comply to the product standard. In case there is no product standard, you will create your own product standard or your own product specification. And you will show that you are consistently meeting your own quality requirement for your own defined product standard. And then you can seek ICMET Plus certification for that particular product standard. So these are the various steps which are involved. First and foremost, you have to show that you are making a medical device. If you're making a hospital screen, you are making a sharps container. That is not a medical device. It is used in a hospital. It is a medical accessory. But you have to first show that what you're making is a device, and it is classified as a low-risk device or a medium-risk device or a high-risk device. What is risk of device? Is risk based on utility, and if something goes wrong, will there be leading to a death or leading to some surgical intervention or just some design changes or some iteration or some quality fixation? So which are the applicable standards? Then you have also the risk management. If something goes wrong, how do you address that nothing will go wrong? There'll be no leakage, there'll be no misfitment, there'll be no blockage. What tests you are doing in the process, what testing you're doing in the sampling to make sure such issues are not there. Your package should be keeping the product sterile. Are you validating the process? Are you verifying the product as being sterile? Is it biologically safe to be embedded in the body? If you're using stainless steel or plastic, how long it can be in the body? 1 day, 1 week, 1 month? What is your claim? If you're making an electronic device on the software verification and validation and the shelf life of the product, how long the sterilization will last? How long the implant life will be? The clinical evaluation of the product in terms of benchmarking it to the competition, how to it's a novel device or not. And then once you're selling the product, keeping tab on the quality and the post-market surveillance, the kind of complaints you get from the market, systemic review of the complaints. Are these reportable complaints to the regulator or they're non-reportable complaints, informing the regulator about it, meeting the labeling requirements, and keeping a robust quality management system. Many of these things you can do in-house. Sometimes you may find that you're overwhelmed and you cannot do it in-house. Don't worry. You can always outsource to somebody else. Nowadays it is more easy than what I had 30 years back, 40 years back when I joined the company. So you can work with consultants, they will tell you how to fix it, and you can negotiate with them and put target timelines by when the problem should be solved, and jointly by teamwork try to resolve the problem. Thank you, and I'm open to any queries and questions from Professor Saab as well as from the audience.
I absolutely loved your storytelling approach. Marvelous. Thank you so much. You have downloaded a whole lot of information. I am so thankful that it has been recorded and it will remain available for anybody for days and months to come. So yeah, I will start with my own curiosity that I do understand that CDSCO is going to roll out its full regulatory regime sometime, not this year October, but maybe next year October. So in the interim, the ICMed Plus standard that has been rolled out by QCI, two questions there. One is that how do I, like the process of demonstrating, like let me talk about something that I know a little bit, this ventilator, that it talks about certain rate of airflow, it talks about certain changes in the airflow pattern based on demand, etc. So how do I demonstrate that, and that is logged that okay, this device has demonstrated the standards that it claims it has? How will that be done in the ICMed Plus scheme?
Okay, so two steps on your query. Let me first elaborate, because you may already be aware, but many people in the audience may not be aware. They're new to the field. So let me just inform for the benefit of the audience that all medical devices on today's date, you can seek voluntary registration on the CDSCO website until September this year. And that will be available to you for voluntary registration, preferably with the ISO 1345 certification from a NABCB certified body. So NABCB is from Quality Council of India. They do accreditation of certification bodies. You must seek a certification from that because there are many bodies who are giving fake certificates and misleading entrepreneurs into buying these fake certificates to consultants. So there are good consultants and bad consultants in the market. You can't buy certificates at 30, 40,000 rupees if somebody is telling you he's misleading you. That is money down the drain. Because finally you will need the original stuff and the real stuff. And that has to be earned, it cannot be bought. So you need to have that ISO 13485. You can go to CDSO website and then get the voluntary registration. If you're making a low risk device or a medium risk device, you have time until August 2022 to seek a manufacturing license for a low risk or a medium risk device. For something like a ventilator, what Professor Saab was talking about, you have time until August 2023 to get a manufacturing license. So that is the advantage that is available to immediately and urgently make the product, because the regulatory regime is not applicable. So that window of opportunity, of course, is available in the short term. But yes, patient safety cannot be compromised. So we would recommend that you should not take any shortcuts. You should seek Icma certification. And in the Icma certification process, like what Professor Saab is talking about, in the product certification part of it, for ventilators now there is a product standard available. So since there is a product standard available for ventilators, whatever is available in your factory or in your IIT engineering college or nearest engineering college nearby, you can get various aspects or clauses to demonstrate compliance of conformity, things like flow meter, peak rate at that laboratory, on your own laboratory. And in case you're not able to do that, then you can find out other laboratories in the country who can do that for you. For example, there is the TUV laboratory in Bangalore, there's a TUV laboratory in Andhra MedTech zone in Visakhapatnam who can do many of these tests for you. So many private laboratories are coming up, even if the government laboratories are not there. Many things you can get tested now within India. So more and more as now regulations come forward, more and such testing laboratories will be available. And even the various engineering colleges and the IICs are coming forward, and Icma is coming forward with proposals to make these testing facilities available to entrepreneurs.
So will someone come to witness the performance of the machine? That is like someone empowered by QCI to come and witness the performance, or will it have to be done by some accredited?
So in the IC Plus scheme is a 2-level of audit or 2-level of review. In the first level of review, you have to submit something what we call a technical file. The previous slide I gave you the main elements in that. So you will put over there your own technical specification, your own test report of meeting that specification, your layout of the plant and building, your workflow of the process. You will document your standards, you will document your processes. You will demonstrate that how you verify after each process by sampling that what you're making is qualifying as per the process. You will show your clinical evaluation report. You will keep a copy of what you evaluated with the competition in the market. You will give a copy of the kind of clinical feedback you've received about the product from the market. That becomes part of your technical file which you will be submitting. So based on the technical file that you submitted, there will be an initial review taken care by your certification body who has been accredited by QCI and who are authorized to give you that certification. They will make the initial review and tell you whether your technical file is adequate or not. Once they find that the technical file is adequate, the second part comes to proving conformity. So for proving conformity, there are the two options available. One is the fitness testing in your factory, and the second option available for them is to rely upon a QCI accredited, NABL accredited laboratory who can do that testing and prove the conformity. Now the caution for the entrepreneur is many laboratories claim that they have got NABL accreditation. you have to find out that accreditation is for what. Now, if somebody is accredited for sterilization and you go with him for a ventilator, he may not be accredited to do testing for a ventilator. So that will be meaningless for Quality Council of India certification body. They will be looking for that accreditation of the laboratory to be for that particular product line. So somebody who's maybe good in microbiological can test for microbiology, somebody for physical can test for physical, somebody for biocompatibility for biocompatible. But if you don't have the core competence, you cannot go to him, it will be waste of money. So caution on that.
Very good. That clarifies it adequately, and to all the attendees, that if you have any ambiguity, any question, please feel free to forward it to us at any point of time. If we cannot answer it, we will forward it to Mr. Nath to get the answers. And of course, there are more episodes coming up where you will have more experts, so you can ask your questions again. Now, right now, let me open it up to the forum. Aditi, where do we have questions?
Yes, sir. So you can have a look at the Q&A in the Q&A box right at the bottom of your screen.
So, yeah, I will go with the first one. So this is, I am picking the questions that we received from the registrants. And Mr. Nath, the first question is very, very relevant. I know even for Hindustan Syringes, is how did COVID-19 change the landscape of medtech industry in the country?
See, COVID has been personally bad for many people. I lost friends, I lost relations. I'm sure each one of us affected deeply by the second wave especially, and a lot of horrific tragedies. At the same time, in many of the medical devices, it has revolutionized the scenario. We've never had that kind of growth which we've seen, what we've seen in the last 1 year's time. And why did we see that? Many people have ventured to make medical devices because they found it suddenly a product and an idea whose time has come into being. People were not aware about it, but when people did not have any business to do with textile, they could go into PPE coverall manufacturing or making masks. People who were in food industry or restaurant or travel industry found zero prospects for the next 1.5 years. So that they diversified into making furniture or equipment, or automotive component manufacturers jumped into making things like ventilators. So a lot of diversification has taken place and the focus has come into medical devices. The very fact we're having this webinar and such a good attendance from 180 people shows the interest in medical devices taking place in the community. So this has been the silver lining, and while there was a good change that has taken place, is necessity is the mother of invention. Because import stopped, there was a huge demand. Because there was a huge demand, prices went up and became profitable. And since there was a huge demand, government stepped in and shared the demand and the target pricing. For the first time, entrepreneurs were being told that the government is willing to buy through tenders so much quantity, so many hundreds of thousands of pieces of masks or tests at 1,500 rupees. People knew there was a target price to achieve, they knew a quantity to be going forward. The government machinery came forward in a very supportive manner. So DST, DBT, BIRAC, the Department of Health Research, Department of Pharmaceuticals, DPITT, even regulatory body like NPPA came forward to help manufacturers. We've never seen this kind of teamwork and never had this kind of support from the government, which we've seen in the last 1 year's time. The IITs, which were, I would say, sleeping, and there used to be some innovative, I'm always in touch with various IITs like Madras and with Bombay and all that, and I visit them regularly with various innovators and all that. So I would see the kind of ideas coming forward and the interest being taken care by the various incubation centers over there. But the kind of rapid pace which we saw in the last 1 year, I've never seen taking place in the last 10 years' time. So within a few months, we were finding IIT Delhi, IIT Kanpur, what you've done with Loka Robotics and the support you gave to make the ventilator is a case study by itself, which a company has gone towards from 0 to 100 crore rupees dreams in 1 year's time. My lab company, to make the test, which was zero 1 year back, is talking about touching 800 crore rupees. So certainly you've got unicorns being created. So these are the prospects and the opportunity. My own company, which was making something like 60 to 70 lakh syringes a day, is making now 90 lakhs and going towards making 1 crore syringes per day by next month's time. So these are the growth prospects available. Now, on one side, of course, is the huge opportunity and the growth. And of course, like I told you, where there is a rose, there are interesting thorns to make sure that it's not easy to pluck that rose. So you always find some challenges. But I think that's where people who are passionate, like what we are about medical devices, we will overcome those thorns and we will get our rose.
So there is another question which I think is very important. Shama Kothari asked that, what is the time to start planning for regulatory roadmap to make best use of time and money? Early stage of prototype, manufacturing ready product.
It starts at the prototype stage itself. Very important.
Yes.
It is the design. So when you are making your technical file, it is a design file that counts. Now you people are engineers. I'm sure in engineering colleges they teach you COE. So you have to have a design file and you must challenge yourself in terms of risk management. That is the design safety use. If you're making a spectacle also, a simple thing like a tongue depressor. Is the design of the tongue depressor safety use? Does it not have any sharp corners? Is there a radius? Is it well grounded? It should not hurt the patient, it should not harm the patient. So there should be no sharp corners. There should be no bristles coming out. There should be no position that instead of depressing the tongue, you are cutting the tongue. So a simple thing like a tongue depressor, forget about an engineering product like a ventilator. You have to see it from the design point. So the first thing regulator is going to ask you, whether you make a low-risk device or a high-risk device in your technical file, is whether you have evaluated a design. For a complex device, which will be the body as an implant, your design file needs to be more complete, including a clinical evaluation and clinical trial kind of a thing, investigation kind of a thing. It may not be required for something simple like a wheelchair or a tongue depressor or a stretcher. But yes, it would need something, at least a sketch or a drawing. It can't be zero. So it's from that position itself. And when you go for voluntary certification like ISO 13485 or Icma 13485, and that is an advantage for seeking Icma 13485 certification, you get an ISO 13485 certification for free alongside in a way. You can negotiate. And once you do that, you will be asked to make that documentation to qualify. When you are working under voluntary system, if you make mistakes, nobody is. After 5 years, if you make a mistake, it is under the legal system and it will be considered to be a legal criminal offense. Right now, until that time, you've got time to take a voluntary certification and learn. And even if you fall down, no problem, you pick yourself up and go forward again. And when you're prepared, you can seek the regulatory approval in advance on a voluntary basis. Don't worry.
So, I'm sorry, I'm badgering you with the question because there are too many enthusiastic participants and they have asked really good questions. So this question is a little different from the regulatory aspect. Rahul Kumar asks that, kindly elaborate on benefits of design transfer to an existing Indian manufacturer versus manufacturing from the scratch. Another person asked very similar question, that when to decide whether to set up my own manufacturing unit or not. Very similar, related questions.
Yes, this is a very, very important and very valid question. Now, this is something for you to decide as an engineer. You want to be a businessman or you want to be a developer engineer. If you think your core competence is engineering, scientific domain, innovation, and you want to focus on development, designing, engineering, stick to that. You can get your product designed, you have proprietary knowledge or a patent. Even if not patent, proprietary knowledge keeps. But we are market leaders. We are market leaders by our proprietary knowledge that we have over the competition in achieving quality. If I put it as a patent, it'll be in public domain. That is the risk of patent. So of course, people will say it is in a patent, it is protected. But when it comes into a public domain under patent, people will play with patents, and on the chair you can have an armchair, you can have legally challenged this thing that my product is different, it is not the same, not identical, but you get the idea out. So there are pros and cons. So as an engineer and developer, you can always license your technology, license the design to an existing manufacturer. You can work in partnership with him. An honest manufacturer like me may not be having patents, but nearly every product that we make is patented. Not by us, by somebody else. We pay him the 5%, 3%, 7% royalty fees. He makes money, we make money. He is specialized in his designing, we specialize in our mass manufacturing. Both of us are winners. We give him the ideas to make a better design, he mixes ideas to make it into a better product. So both can coexist, but if you think that yes, you have the money, you have the business acumen, you can make marketing, you can build an organization, you've got the organization capacity capabilities, feel free to become an entrepreneur. Who is an entrepreneur? Who takes risks? So if you think you can jump into the swimming pool, don't worry whether it is hot water, cold water, take the risk, go for it. A company like mine, of course our scale is bigger. Many years back, a 6 lakh rupee investment was a huge risk when I had to discuss with my father to give me 6 lakh rupees permission to buy a printing machine to go in for automation. And my first loan for 20 lakh rupees from HSIDC was a talking point in my family for 6 months, because my father was averse to getting loans from the banks and institutions, and he was completely against taking loans. But yes, that is the risk you have to take as an entrepreneur. On today's date, my company is spending 150 crore rupees in the next 1 year's time to increase the capacity to make syringes for COVID. And who knows, next year there may be no COVID and we'll have surplus capacity. So these are business risks. See your core competence.
So the
Next question, please.
The next question, I will give Mr. Nath little time to breathe, because I will be able to handle this question from personal experience. Mr. Mathivanan asks that there is a high percentage of imported components or equipment that come into the country. What avenues and information is available for existing component manufacturers like automotive to identify medical components or subsystems to augment device equipment overseas manufacturers? So let me start with a story that, as Mr. Nath mentioned, that Noka Robotics has shot into a 100 crore rupee turnover company in a short span. And during the second wave, I know that they were manufacturing 100 ventilators a day, which was not a kid's play by any stretch of imagination. But as mentioned by Mr. Mathivanan, that many of the components are still imported. And one such import order, there was nothing wrong. Money was paid. Everything was done at the airport. The exporting country's national policy stopped the export from coming in. As a result, their production stalled for 2 to 3 days. Now, this is how much dependence we have on imported components, that whether people in my country can breathe or not can be dictated by someone else, which is unacceptable. Now, the issue is that whether automotive industry should be asked to make the subcomponents. Like, if you remember, in March, April 2020, every government, UK, US, India, they tried making ventilators with automotive industry leaders, and it did not really happen. That is because changing the production lines is not that trivial. And we may not need to. If you look back in the history, what came first, automotive industry or automotive component industry? The automotive industry came first. That created the demand, and then the component industry came in slowly. I can tell you that today, Nokak Robotics first started making ventilators with imported components, but in the last 4 months, they have developed 4 critical components that were used to be imported for their machine or many other machines. So I would say that once the medical devices industry grows, and as you learned from Mr. Nath, that it is growing. See, like his existing data showed that there are very few companies that are even above 50 crores. So therefore, obviously, there was no large manufacturers of medical devices, so there is no question of component manufacturing. But now that medical devices will be manufactured in the country, I sit in many evaluation committees of DST, DBT like BIRAC, Nidhi, etc. And I am seeing many proposals on component manufacturing, and that is fantastic. So I think that once the medical devices start to be manufactured, albeit initially with imported components, eventually the component manufacturing will also catch up. So there is another question.
Can I add that a little bit?
Yes, please.
Professor, I would like to add over here. In the case of electronics, you've got associations like IEEMA and IESTA.
Yes.
You can write to us, we will redirect you to them. They are the ones who make the electronic components for the consumer electronics, things like mobile phones or automotive components or automotive side, or even the defense side. So they can help you to find the components that you need. And then Andhra MedTech Zone has created an app. Based on the app, you can send in your requirement and it acts as an aggregator. It will help you to find a supply source for that particular component. And you'll be happy to know that now many of the manufacturers for components like sensors are coming to India. So before we were depending only on Honeywell, for example, for making the flow meters.
Yes.
Now the second largest manufacturer for the flow meter sensors in the country, in the world, Amphenol, has put a factory in Andhra MedTech Zone in Visakhapatnam. So we are on our way to become Atmanirbhar. And it is a good area. A few people, engineers over here, don't think only about making medical device. There's a good opportunity for you to make the downstream components also. Think in that direction also.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the last question.
There's the next question which I saw over here. I would like to answer that, Professor Saab, with your permission. What is the main objective of Icma certification?
Yeah, that's the question.
Is it to have tracking of the quality certification of the marketplace or to satisfy a regulatory requirement? And what happens when the regulations kicks in for devices? What role does this certification have to play? Now, this is a voluntary certification. You saw my graph where I showed to you that mandatory requirements are less than voluntary requirements. So when you are making the product as per a voluntary standard, you have the competence and the confidence of meeting the regulatory requirements. It's like as a sports person, you want to be a champion. You've seen people practicing for championships like an athlete. If they're practicing for 100-meter race, they will practice actually for a 400-meter race, not for 100 meters race, because they need that extra stamina for that last 50 meters or last 10 meters, and they can't tire over there. So somebody is running a marathon, he'll be running with weights in his shoes or in his backpack, so that he has got the stamina to run faster on the real championship day. The same thing over here. So when you have the voluntary certification, you are more prepared than the mandatory requirement if you want to be a champion and a quality leader. Going forward, what is required are regulatory requirements. You can manage without voluntary, but if you want to be a quality leader and you want to have quality leadership, tomorrow, say 5 years down the line, if you make nebulizers, there will be 50 manufacturers making nebulizers. There are 500 companies making masks on today's date. How does one show is better than the other? he shows that he has got certification, authentic certification. So after some time post-regulatory, the role of ICMA certification will be to filter out the high quality manufacturers from the average manufacturers. So if 500 manufacturers all have to comply with the legal requirement, only 50 may be able to comply with the voluntary certification, which will become tougher over a period of time. We keep on raising the bar. So it will differentiate between those 50 certified manufacturers from the 500 average manufacturers. Thank you.
Okay, so last question from the audience, Mr. Rahul Bora, please ask your question. Rahul, please go ahead and ask your question.
Mr. Rahul, you will have to unmute yourself.
Okay, so
I think he's having some issues.
yeah, no problem. So I think we now need to let Mr. Nath go. It has been a very, very interactive and inspiring session. Thank you so much. There are few more names I need to thank. I hope you know, Mr. Nath, that this aspect of our incubator, regulatory and compliances for medical devices, is mentored by none other than your very good friend and our alumnus, Mr. Anil Johri. Without his help and active participation, today's event would not have been possible. And of course, my team at SIIC, Aditi and Ms. Sadhana Monga, they have done all the coordination and all of that. Ragini, who is here, who is our communications head, she made all the display items, and she is the person who handles all our social media, and that's how all of you got to know about it and you came. And lastly, very, very important, all the participants. Without you, this program would not have made any sense. I hope that you all benefited. I certainly benefited. I learned a lot, and I hope you also learned a lot. Please tune back in. So we will be having Mr. Nath again back on 7th August. That will be a panel discussion, but it will be less of a speech from the panelists. It will be more of a question answer session from the attendees. The purpose is to educate you, and clear your doubts. So again, we thank Mr. Nath for agreeing to come to this forum on 7th August. And I must thank my institute, IIT Kanpur, my Dean of Research. He is attending because he wants to learn about this whole ecosystem. IIT Kanpur has now received funding from BIRAC to set up our own medical device rapid prototyping facility and a testing facility for EMI EMC testing facility. So that is being led by our dean, not as his capacity as the dean, but as a very fine electronics engineer. So I would like to thank him and the entire institute administration. Yeah, we'll see you again next week. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Before you close, I would like to make an announcement for benefit of everybody. Many of you may not be aware, let me bring it to your knowledge. Your state, Uttar Pradesh, where your institute is located, is going to be putting up a medical device park at Yaida, the Yamuna Expressway next to the airport, which is coming up over there. 270 acres of land has been allocated to us. We have been to the site 3 times, and I think within about a month's time, the Chief Minister is going to formally be launching the project. We have requested for this project to be specialized in 2 areas. Of course, it's a medical device park, so any entrepreneur can make any kind of device. But since it's such a diversified field, the common manufacturing facilities for testing, for the mother units, we've sought for them to be focused on making the scope available and limited to the small medical electronics. Things like thermometers, BiPAP machines, basic thing like a blood pressure instrument, glucometer, these are not made in the country. So ventilator, of course, is a tall idea, but basic consumer goods are not made in the country. Things like infusion pumps will be made over here. And you can think for ideas and projects like that. The second area will be specialized, will be for IVD instrumentation and for IVD reagent making and testing. Because of close proximity to NID, you have advantage of IIT. You will also have the advantage of BHU. You will also have the advantage of a software park which is coming up at Lucknow in SGPGI over there.
Yeah.
So that already is being launched. Progress is already on that. Contracts have already been given out. And within a month's time, there'll be actual work taking place over there. It has slowed down because of COVID by a few months, but it is still on. So the ecosystem is evolving very rapidly. A lot of potential for people who are there in the North India zone to take advantage of this opportunity over there. And you're welcome to explore that opportunity over there, which will allow you to migrate from the incubation center at IIT Kanpur and bridge that into making the product commercially at that MedTech park over there. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very important information. And we are trying to work with both STPI and the IEDA authorities. Yes. Okay.
Thank you all.
So, thank you.
Yes.
I'll see you again.